This session focuses on immigration and settlement and integration policies that are working to achieve the goals that have been set for Canada and for immigrants who are making Canada their new home, and those policies that maybe are seen as a bit less effective. How do we optimize these policies and balance the needs of Canadians and newcomers alike? In addition to discussing these issues, panelists may discuss the pros and cons of specific policies and changes that could be implemented to improve them so that they achieve their stated aims. We have 4 speakers, and each has been asked to speak for a maximum of about 20 minutes, and we'll hold the questions till the end of the panel. Once all 4 speakers are done, we'll open it up for questions and answers and discussion. So our first speaker is Corinne Prince-St-Amand, who is Director General, Integration, Foreign Credentials Referral Office of IRCC. Corinne.
Merci beaucoup, Vicky et Jean, pour l'invitation ce matin. C'est vraiment incroyable comment votre conférence a été beaucoup plus large qu'auparavant. Je me rappelle the early days, as we say, when the rooms were much smaller, but the participants were just as passionate, I'm sure. Congratulations to you on your growth. It's a privilege and an honor to be before you this morning, particularly following Minister McCallum, and to be on this wonderful panel with Chloe from BC and our other panelists. I think the minister said, in his own words, how uniquely fortunate we all are to have the opportunity to be working in the settlement sector at this point in time. I think this particular opening slide kind of says it all. As a humble Canadian, it's hard for me to believe sometimes that Canada is actually a rock star in this space. A rock star, like it's hard to believe. Other countries are calling on us daily to ask us, what is our integration model? How do you do it? From the Syrian initiative to our Prime Minister and his rock star status, even our American neighbors are knocking on our door. And on our American neighbors, all I can say on that is that it will not be business as usual. So the question I get all the time is, how do you do it? How do you do it? And when you think about what you see in Europe in particular and the huge contrast between what's happening here in Canada, my answer to those questions is quite simple. First of all, Canada has always had a managed migration process, a model. We table annually before the 1st of November every year an annual levels plan in the House of Commons that sets out who we will bring into the country, what numbers out of each category for the coming calendar year. It's all managed. And it's not just the federal government that decides that. There's huge consultations that go on, and many of you in this room were involved in those consultations all summer. And after the consultations happen, we have in-depth discussions with our provincial and territorial colleagues who are partners in immigration in Canada. And so all of this is so important. We also expect citizenship from every immigrant and refugee we select, right from the point of selection. There's many countries in the world where citizenship is a dream for them. And so with that expectation, we need a world-class settlement system in order to integrate them. And finally, our two-way street. We expect communities and Canadians across Canada to welcome immigrants into their communities, and we expect newcomers to integrate. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what works, tell you about the challenges, how we're addressing the challenges, and those challenges and how we're addressing them involves all of you. So Canada currently is leading the world globally in per capita immigrant numbers at close to 1% of population. We and our Aussie and Kiwi friends down under are receiving per capita more immigrants than the US, which is only at 0.32%, and the UK, which is at 0.48%. Secondly, we're one of the most welcoming communities in the world. We are excelling as the most tolerant country in community acceptance of minority groups and migrants at 84%, as opposed to our other OECD colleagues at only 61%. And that was demonstrated by the huge response of all Canadians to the Syrian initiative. And finally, other countries are knocking on our door to learn from Canada's approach to immigration. I'm sitting at a table this morning speaking to Carmen and telling her that the number of requests we get, my small, tiny team get every year to either support an international visit or speak at some international conference, invited by the home country, or share our integration model with them. Usually we get about 25 requests per year. Just since January, we're almost at 80. And so this is putting huge pressure on us, although it's a fabulous problem to have. So I said, in terms of what works, our annual levels plan, the minister spoke about family reunification and a future announcement around reducing processing times there. And in terms of refugees, we as a nation are being heralded for our response to the refugee crisis, but we're being pressured to do even more. The Canadian model I mentioned is a two-way street. Communities, governments, civil society, this includes all of you, all of our provincial and territorial colleagues, all of the municipal governments. Employers are critical, regulatory bodies, professional associations, the education sector, all of the service provider organizations that the minister spoke about this morning, as well as Canadians. And I, as well, want to say thank you, merci, to all of you, because I know that regardless of whether the phone rings at 4 a.m. in the morning with a refugee family arriving at the airport, or the BlackBerry goes off at midnight with some crisis, you don't watch the clock. You have stepped up day in, day out with a smile and a hug and some service to provide to, some compassion to provide to the clients that are at your door. And that, my friends, is the reason Canada is such a rock star. Congratulations. So, also just briefly, in terms of the settlement program, our minister and senior executives believe that there's no use bringing in even one immigrant or one refugee if we can't integrate them. And we just spent 2 days, Vicki, at the National Settlement Council meeting, and Chris is here in the room. Chris and I managed the NSC with all of the service provider organization umbrellas, the national organizations, our provincial and territorial colleagues, and all of our regional teams, to talk about these issues. You know, what's working on pre-arrival? We're one of the only countries in the world that has such a robust pre-arrival service, with the dream of having the individual get labor market attachment before they even leave home. And it's happening. Language, critical, especially with the recent Syrian cohort, where it's literacy to CLB4, which are the critical areas, lots of pressure on the language system at the lower levels. Foreign credential recognition, always been an issue. Federal, provincial governments have done a lot. Employers are doing more. Regulatory bodies are at the center of this, but we need to do even more. And employment is the key. Support services, this is something that other countries can't believe, but In Canada, we actually provide free childcare, free interpretation services, and free transportation services to get our clients to those language classes and to all of the other services we provide. Our thought is that if we can't get them there, they won't be able to access the service. Logical, but other countries see that as too much of a luxury or too expensive. So, Vicki, you asked me to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. No pressure. I wouldn't say this is bad, but I would say these are some of our challenges. So, as you know, overall, we have a very positive integration story. Those that are selected for labor market for the labor market are showing greater economic outcomes. We have one of the highest naturalization rates in the world. And we have comparable voting rates to Canadian-born. Immigrants are active volunteers and entrepreneurs, I might add. And interestingly, our research shows, and you all know, second-generation immigrant children are outperforming their peers. Why? Because they're getting more post-secondary degrees. Interesting. But newcomers to Canada these days, folks, are coming with more complex needs. Certainly in terms of language, our source countries have changed. Historically, we're looking to Europe. Now we look to the Asia Pacific, as well as to Africa and the Middle East. A significant number of our permanent residents are reporting no knowledge of English or French. And these statistics, I'm going to just read them out to you because you may not be able to see the screen. This is really important. 54% of refugees, 43% of family class, and 27% of economic spouses and dependents report no knowledge of English or French. That is a challenge for us. And finally, because of those language pressures, that's putting quite a significant pressure on the settlement system, but I would also say on our education system across the land. So, according to our population projections, future labor force replacement will come mainly from immigration. We all know this. At some point in the 2020s, we believe that immigrants will account for the net increase in Canada's labor force. Don't want to spend too much time on that. The Growth Council is telling the government that we should move to 450,000 newcomers per year. As you know, the government has decided on 300,000 in the Levels Plan. And 450,000 sounds good given those dire predictions, but remember the minister's message. There's no use bringing in even one refugee or immigrant if we cannot integrate them. So our absorptive capacity has brought pressures, and you all know housing, education, and income assistance are some of the biggest pressures. So how can we address the challenge? Well, I've talked a lot about the Levels Plan. Economic class going up by 7%, family class by 5% next year, and our refugee numbers are doubling from pre-2016 levels from about 13,000 a year annually to 25,000 a year annually. And a few innovative things that we're doing, Vicki, in terms of addressing these challenges. For the Atlantic provinces in the room, we have an Atlantic immigration pilot program. And in the first year, which it'll be launched early next year, in the first year of the pilot, we'll be bringing in over 2,000 principal applicants plus their family members into the Atlantic. So if 4 or 5 folks per family, it'll be more than 10,000 individuals in that year. And what's interesting about this, not the numbers, not that it's a provincial nominee program, what's interesting is that employers are being asked to be even more involved in the settlement of the individuals in this pilot. And I can speak more about that on a Q&A maybe, Vicki, given I'm running out of time. I think more than ever, we need to use the tools in the toolbox we have around recognition of prior learning. And kudos to my friends at CAPLA who've been doing this for years, but especially for the Syrian movement, recognition of prior learning for individuals who have lost their credentials or never had credentials will need that. Aussi, pour les communautés francophones au Québec, c'est très important pour nous comme un ministère d'obtenir notre cible de 4,4% pour des immigrants économiques avant 2018. Et le modèle de la mobilité francophone va nous sûrement aider à cet égard. So, as I said, there's a whole of society approach, and all of you are helping us achieve these challenges. So in closing, the minister talked about outcomes and results, and I can tell you that he's going to be, I hope, very happy with the results of our National Settlement Program evaluation, which is coming out April 2017. This is the biggest evaluation our department does. It's a year-long process. Many of you have been contacted as part of that, and that will provide us some of the much-needed results we need to see if the program we have, which other countries view as rock star status, is good. And I know there will be areas to improve, and there will be things that are going very well. Our 2015 call for proposals is, our ops team is currently negotiating that in the field with many of your organizations now. That will be critical. And we're already starting to work on the call for proposals 2020. I've been talking to the minister's office this week. We'll probably need another national settlement conference. For those of you who were at the last one in 2013, you know what a big deal that was. As well as the 25 summits that followed that to determine what the priorities are for our call for the program. Lots of work we're doing on innovation, and you'll see, I hope, the center here in Ottawa putting money towards an innovation fund with hopefully, and I'm pretty sure, diversity and integration as one of the themes. And finally, the open data portal. This is fabulous. I know that those of you in the room who are in this space probably know about the open data portal. In terms of integration, our IRCC team is posting information on that monthly under settlement, resettlement, and a special section on refugees, so Syrian refugees. So I would love to hear how that's going, what more is needed, and I hope that I've given you some food for thought on the good, the bad, and the ugly.